All right, welcome to Halitics on ooh, here we go. Welcome to, oh, I see where we got a problem there. All right, welcome to Halitics on Wednesday, hump day. Great to talk to you. Always a pleasure, always my honor. Hope you will, in fact, talk to me as well. Give me a call, 240-363-7190, 240-363-7190. Our good friends at Climate Defiance are at it again. Very impressive. Remember, these are the folks who talk truth, speak truth to power, where they will go where others fear to tread, confronting Biden administration officials repeatedly on their failure to curb our consumption of fossil fuels, thereby destroying the planet for this generation and future generations. They went up to that playground of the rich and somewhat famous. It's really more for the, I guess, affluent. Oh, there's famous people there too. Martha's Vineyard, beautiful island off Cape Cod in Massachusetts. It's where the President Obama frequently visits, frequently vacations. I think he has a house there, multi-million-dollar compound. May have sold it. I'm not sure about that. The Vice President Kamala Harris was there, and our friends at Climate Defiance were not far behind. We'll play the video, but first, just to kind of whet your appetite for action against the climate cataclysm, the new Holocaust, as I have taken to calling it, trying to be as accurate as I can be, as well as making clear the seriousness of this crisis. And we're going to talk about the ice melt in Antarctica. We're going to talk about the, well, it's not unprecedented, the more than a century in the making rain storm in Beijing. And we'll also address what happened in Maui, the disaster there. Was it a climate crisis event? But let's go first to Antarctica. And this is just posted over at our friends at France 24. I put the climate change definition there in the video because the video came with it. I actually got it. It was in the comments section that France 24 had put in to its own YouTube video. So here we go. Ice loss to become more uncommon. And this, I think, and we've talked about Antarctica already on this program, but I think it really, again, highlights just how serious the crisis is, just how significant the situation is when it comes to impacts on humanity. Here we go.
It's the dead of winter in the southern hemisphere, but Antarctica's sea ice is no longer reaching the great expanse it once did. This July, the ice shelves were 1.5 million square kilometers short of their surface area the same month last year.
Warm water is melting parts of the sea ice, and there have been strong winds in some basins, reducing the formation of ice flows.
Research suggests that a major deep ocean current has been slowing down significantly because of the melting ice. It could directly change the weather we're used to seeing.
If the North Atlantic current called AMOC slows down, the Gulf Stream also slows down. The Gulf Stream is what allows Bordeaux to have much warmer weather than Montreal, even though they're the same latitude.
Some studies say temperatures have risen enough to trigger the collapse of the ice sheet in West Antarctica already. The melting of this alone would lead to 4 meters of sea level rise.
Pretty scary stuff right there. 4 meters of sea level rise. You just heard that. So remember, a meter is actually 39 inches. It's more than a yard. That's the potential. If we are where some climatologists say we already have reached, we're already at a point where the complete collapse of that West Antarctic shelf is only a matter of time. And you can see right there that that ocean water, that open water with some icebergs in it, where previously at this time of year, dead of winter, it should be all ice. We saw some of the penguins struggling there. Look, they do a real nice job with the videos. Obviously, the goal there is to show just how serious the problem is. But I don't know how anyone could doubt it. I mean, we're unprecedented hot temperatures in Europe, in the American Southwest, massive rainstorm in China recently, parts of Asia, Bangladesh, Pakistan are uninhabitable now due to the climate catastrophe. So this is what we're fighting. This is why I just doff my cap to the great folks at Climate Defiance. And if you recall, we did talk to Jay Waxy here a few weeks ago, and we'll be hearing from him again. But just let me play one more clip before we get to Climate Defiance. And again, we're talking about just how incredibly serious this is, and the specific weather events beyond just the unprecedented days, weeks, months, years of ever hotter temperatures, but specific climactic weather events that are more likely due to climactic shifts caused by human consumption, humans burning fossil fuels. So here is China, the most populous nation. I don't know. Is it still? It's either China or India, are both well over 1 billion people combined. They have about 3 billion, so more than a third of the world's population. Here we go from China.
Now, Dr. Peter, Beijing continues to reel under incessant rainfall, and this is the worst in nearly 140 years.
Right. I think you just mentioned the reason, the public knowing reason of why the flash flood occurred in Beijing and northern China. There's always perfect reason for flash flood. And we have to admit, the climate change has been our daily life right now. And every 1 degree Celsius raise in the atmosphere actually brings 6% more moisture in the air. And when typhoon make a landfall in the mainland China and keep moving northward, it retain vortex form, which suck in the moisture to the northern China. And luckily or unluckily, there are 2 mountain range actually block the moisture, which enhance the flash flood in the northern China. We all know in Pacific region, July to October is the hot season of typhoon. We definitely will see more typhoons happen in the Pacific Ocean. And as I mentioned, the sea surface temperature as well as the air temperature has been, has raised regularly high. So,
all right, so let me stop it there. And the doctor, I thought, did a really good job explaining exactly why that unprecedented, at least in 140 years in Beijing, that rain fall, which caused a number of deaths, massive dislocations. And as from what I understand, from what my wife told me, the Chinese authorities did a really good job. Some of the flooding was as a result of diversion of the river there that flows through Beijing. I'm not sure which river that is. I don't believe it's the Yangtze. I'm not really sure. But whatever river it is, they diverted it to a degree which caused more flooding, but in outlying areas where it was less disruptive to human life. But ultimately, there's only so much they can do when these kinds of less than a century frequent storms occur with more and more frequency, as the doctor said will happen. And he specifically, addressed the dynamics where hotter temperatures mean the air can absorb more water, and also because the ocean is warmer, that makes it easier for the air, for the atmosphere to suck up even more water than it would normally under the circumstances. So you have a double whammy. You have water that's more easily absorbed by the atmosphere, and you have an atmosphere that can absorb more water in total. And that causes these very massive rainfalls. So that's what we just learned. And it's something we have to adapt to. Some areas will get massive floods. Others will see drought and broiling temperatures that are unfit, period, for human habitation. We're already seeing that as well. So floods from massive storms as well as from the ice melt in the polar regions. The North Pole now ice-free in the summers, and we're looking towards possibly no complete coverage in the winter even. So there will be some ice, but it won't completely cover the Arctic Ocean as it used to. So these are just tremendous, drastic changes that we have never, that haven't been observed in millions of years. And we can thank the human activities, burning fossil fuels, the new Holocaust, as I call it. So a lot of folks are hoping to do something. A lot of folks talk about this. I talk about it. But there are some people who are really taking action, who are doing something. And those people are, first and foremost, as far as I'm aware, our great friends over there at Climate Defiance. I hope you'll check them out, climatedefiance.org. I hope you'll share. And I have a question for you as I play this video, something for you to think about. Do you feel like this is useful? Does this make a difference? Does this change things? I don't know. I think we have to confront our leaders who are fiddling while our planet is burning. But is this in the end going to change things? And if not, what would?
Excuse me, Madam Vice President Kamala Harris. We are in a climate emergency, and in the midst of a climate emergency, 80 people have died in Hawaii. 80 people have died. Thousands are displaced through the climate chaos. And when we were there, we were wondering, yes, I hear you, but the planet is burning and people are dying. The planet is burning and people are dying, and we're wondering if you uphold your promises.
All right, let me stop it there. So he says the planet is burning, people are dying. We're wondering if you'll uphold your promises. Remember, Biden did campaign on being a president who would be a climate first president. Obviously, we haven't seen that. There have been there's been financing available for clean green energy in industries, and that has been a positive. I'm not going to completely ignore that or elide it. But without action to actually curb our consumption, which we're not seeing, this is simply not good enough. Yes, at some point, the green energy will become cheap enough so that we'll stop, presumably, hopefully, consuming fossil fuels. But that won't be for a long, long time. In many places, fossil fuels are cheaper, or they're cheap. They're close enough in costs that industries, businesses that rely on them are not going to transition. That's why we need to actually make the cost of burning fuels much, much more expensive. And that is something this administration has shown zero appetite to do. In fact, they're going in the wrong direction, greenlighting more projects that will mean more supply, which will mean lower costs, lower prices. So Jay is there. He's saying, excuse me, Madam Vice President, are you going to keep your promise? And then you hear the crowd start to whistle in appreciation, and that's because he's being pulled out of the audience. And it's really extraordinary. I've been to Martha's Vineyard. I was there, I don't know, maybe it was 20 plus years ago. And it was hotter. I mean, we'd already seen, of course, temperatures get hot. I believe at one point, 1996 was the hottest year on record. It's gotten ever hotter since then. But when I was in Martha's Vineyard, I couldn't believe how humid and hot it was. It was just a remarkable heat spell. And this was 20 years ago. Temperatures have only gotten worse. So all these folks enjoying the I don't want to quite say it's bucolic, but the pastoral environment in Martha's Vineyard, who are applauding, their environment is being very, very seriously compromised. You know, even the wealthiest people can avoid, can escape, can go places, can go to paradise like Hawaii or Martha's Vineyard, where most people are broiling in, you know, cities or rural areas. They can barely afford the air conditioning, which is exacerbating the problem. But of course, if you like to go to those paradises, you have to recognize that the climate cataclysm, the new Holocaust, is also rendering them far less pleasant, far less enjoyable, far less of an escape. And we'll talk about Hawaii in a little bit, because Hawaii does not fit neatly into that box of the Maui wildfires, that is, does not fit neatly into that box where we can say, okay, this is likely or this is very probably caused by the climate crisis. This is, as we can for sure, the Antarctic ice melt, as we can for sure, the rains in Beijing. We can't say that about Maui. What we can say is that more wildfires, hotter wildfires, are consistent with the human-caused new Holocaust.
And then we're in the middle of a climate emergency. You're expanding fossil fuels faster than Trump. Expanding fossil fuels faster than Trump is. Y'all are failing on climate. You are burning the planet with
It's just amazing how there's complete lack of recognition, complete lack of acknowledgement. She just blathers on. And I mean, you know, this is when we have on Arlen, and I look at I talk about why I'm so strongly inclined to support Cornel West. And, you know, when I focus on Trump and what he did in the run up to January 6th, especially, you know, I consider, I say, hey, maybe maybe it's true. Maybe he's so bad. The guy is a fascist, or proto-fascist. The same could, of course, be said for Biden, right? Endless war. We'll talk about that. But it's one of those situations where whoever you're talking about, it's good for the other person, right? If we talk about Biden, Harris, that's a positive for Trump, because Biden and Harris are so bad. But then when you talk about Trump, you're like, oh my gosh, this guy really did try to stay in office illegally against the wishes of the voters. And he's in complete denial, much as Harris is in this video. So I don't know what you do. Any answers, please? 240-363-7190. And if you say to me, well, Trump is so bad, so awful, that's the end of it, I'm not gonna, that's fine. You can say it, and for you, that's enough. It's not enough for me. To earn my vote, you got to show me something. And maybe the Inflation Reduction Act was something. It was enough, maybe. But as Jay says, you're expanding fossil fuels faster than Trump. So if ultimately the goal is to reduce our consumption of fossil fuels, and it has to be, then what are we doing? Why are they even in the running? Why are they even in the running? 240-363-7190. 240-363-7190. And you hear the desperation in Jay's voice, and I'll tell you, he's being lugged out of that room by cops. I'm not sorry I played it over me, because that's how I feel. That's just how desperate I am right now, and desperate to get you to to see things, I hope, the way I do, or maybe you can get me to see things your way. If you really believe, as Orland does, as many of you do, John does, that, what are you talking about, Harris? It's all about Trump. I just don't see that.
The fuel's faster than Trump. Will you please commit? Please commit to ending fossil fuels on federal land. It was your campaign promise.
All right, so there it is. Very, very powerful video. Very meaningful. ClimateDefiance.org, I believe. Or is it com? Maybe it's com. I don't know. I'm going to look it up real quick to tell you. But please check them out. I mean, they're doing more than anybody. And sorry for your hearing my tapping away. I guess it's .org. Yeah, I see it's not .com. Okay, so we're going to get to Hawaii in just a second. You know, I want to give, I don't know if you're listening. I assume at some point in Ohio now, guy who's always finding fault with everything I do, and I can't, and I don't mind that. I really don't. That's fine. Catch me out. I can't say I love it. I'll be honest, but hey, if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. I want to know that I'm wrong. I want to be, because I hate being wrong. I hate being wrong. So if I am wrong, tell me so I can correct myself and be right. If I don't get that I'm wrong, tell me so I will get it right in the future. And there's a guy who often catches me out. Most recently, I think I remember was when I said that the Atlantic Ocean was as hot as a hot tub, and he pointed out, well, that was in a little bay and it was shallow, and temperatures there might have even been hotter previous occasions. Okay, fair enough. I've talked about Maui. Maui is a terrible, terrible tragedy, and it's largely human caused. It is human caused. But to say it was caused by the climate catastrophe, the new Holocaust, is a little strong. We can't say that. The evidence doesn't support that. It does support the thought that, and I've said there's a multifactorial, and I've been talking quite about this. There's a multifactorial causation here. It's not just one or largely one factor. Let's go to the video.
Tonight, the death toll from the Hawaii wildfires continues to grow, now up to 106, with 3/4 of the burn zone still to be searched. And also tonight,
yes, we are in the pool right now.
New video showing tourists surrounded by walls of fire forced to jump into the pool of a resort to escape the flames. It's been 1 week now since the deadly fires first broke out, and emotions remain raw.
It's not just ash on your clothing when you take it off. It's our loved ones.
Governor Newsom announcing tonight more than 200 Californians will be headed to Hawaii, as well as Oregon, where wildfires are raging. The president also offering help from the federal government.
Every asset they need will be there for them. And we will be there in Maui as long as it takes.
There is still a lot of work to be done.
But it broke me. It still breaks me. This is what keeps me going, helping people.
Today, 4 of the victims were identified, the first group of many we will learn of that suffered a tragic end.
Only 3 of the bodies that we recovered had enough fingerprint to share who they were. There are children. One car, for example, had a family of 4. We can tell it when it's a child because it's a smaller body.
Tough to hear news like that. The cause of these fires remain under investigation, but a lawsuit has already been filed against the local power company there for not turning off the power lines during those extreme winds. The governor has already promised an investigation.
All right, so a lot there. I didn't interrupt it. I considered it. I did not. Also want to give the shout out as to Jeff Linder, the gentleman who frequently calls me out when I am wrong, and sometimes when I think I'm not wrong, but he is certain I am, or at least hopes to prove with either statistics that are telling the truth, or maybe they're not. Either way, I was thinking about Jeff, because I was thinking when I talk about Hawaii, I got to be really careful not to say, okay, this Holocaust, this mini Holocaust, if you want to call it that, is not many for the people who live there. 106 dead, and I think they're saying could be twice as many. The death toll could climb to more than double that. More than half of the affected area, the burn zone, has not even been searched. And I believe there are hundreds and hundreds missing. So the death toll will unquestionably continue to rise. I have to be really careful not to say this is clearly the climate catastrophe. The evidence just doesn't support that in this particular case. I want to be just really clear. There were a lot of other factors. The news report that there was a spark and This may have been from a down power line. The winds were very, very strong, and the Hawaii Power did not turn power off. It certainly didn't do it quickly enough. There apparently had been warnings. They knew there was a risk, and they failed to take the necessary step to protect against the worst possible outcome, which would have been, of course, turning the power off. They didn't do it. They didn't do it sufficiently. So that was a significant factor. The strong winds, the drought. But strong trade winds and drought are not unique or uncommon, are not uncommon in this area. And as I mentioned, Hawaii, much of it is desert-like. Depends where you are. There's many microclimates. And as I remember driving past line at one point, yes, scrub, it was dry, it was sear, it was brown. So that is not climate crisis. I mean, that's the way it is. That's the way it's been. Now, we have had more drought. There seems to be, the temperatures are hotter. This could be a factor, but this is not like some other events we'll get to where we can say with a significant degree of confidence that they're either caused by or badly exacerbated, like the Cat 5 hurricanes we're seeing by the climate crisis. So here is, and I circled a climatologist, someone I'm inclined to give a lot of credence to what she says. Natural climate variability in Hawaii is very large, and picking out the human-induced climate change signs is really difficult, says Abby Frazier from Clark University in Worcester. All right, so that's a very highly reputable school, especially for the sciences. Yeah, there it is. We don't know. We don't know. And we can, she notes, does Dr. Frazier, that the main factor was all those invasive grasses. In other words, non-native species of grass, which are highly flammable. Highly flammable. That's not the climate crisis. That's humans bringing in new species, either deliberately or accidentally, not being careful. A lot of agricultural regions in Hawaii have now been converted to hotels and to residences. And that means that area that was previously under cultivation, that was being irrigated, where there was less plants, right? Because you have the rows, which are just dirt, and you're constantly turning it over with putting down the furrows and the plows to turn over the weeds and have just dirt. Now they're invasive species that are extremely flammable. So again, I am the first to say the new Holocaust is the biggest challenge we face. But that doesn't mean that every single tragedy, every single weather event, even an extreme event or natural disaster is necessarily, can be confidently attributed to human activity. Well, it is human activity for sure, but in this case, human activity meaning burning fossil fuels as opposed to agriculture and then transitioning to residences and the like. So Daniel Swain, another climate scientist, one at UCLA, says that we cannot state with any degree of confidence that the Maui wildfires resulted from or directly caused by the human-caused climate crisis. Instead, let's look at other wildfires like those in Canada, where we have where wildfires were previously virtually unknown, and how in California now, wildfire season is basically year-round. That's what Swain is saying. Those are the reasons. Those are the direct results of human activity. But I know that Jimmy Dore and I don't have the clip, but maybe I'll play it tomorrow. Tomorrow we're going to have, by the way, I want to just make sure you know, we will have Miss Lizzie back, the comic, and she's going to have another friend of hers with us. So we're going to talk her comedy show in New York. Really like to give her a shout out and platform her as well. Hope you'll check it out. And she's a great progressive, so we want to always support progressive comedians like Lizzie. We'll note that in many ways, Jimmy is a progressive. I always considered him to be so, but I think he's moved, unfortunately, in a different direction. I think that's, in a lot of ways, very sad. He has a video out. I have not watched it, so I may be unfair to him. But I believe he's going to say that, oh, it's not the climate. The Hawaii wildfires are caused by the Hawaii Power, which didn't shut down its electric stream, its electricity distribution soon enough, and the massive winds. And that's all fair. It's all true. But it's only a little bit of the story. And here's where I have the huge problem with Dore. Fine, talk about that. But don't ignore the fact that, Phoenix saw, 2 weeks of 115 degrees every single day. The oceans are hotter than they've ever been. The massive storm in Beijing. Those are important too. Those are important facts too. And I think this is where we see our media get it wrong all the time. They have an axe to grind. Whether it's that the climate crisis is a hoax, that finds some event which maybe have been overblown, some weather event which maybe was overblown, and then insist that that proves that the climate crisis, climate catastrophe is a hoax, when obviously it proves nothing of the sort. Or they'll say, you can't trust Big Pharma, which I don't think you can, but they'll only talk about, they're lying about how negotiating with Medicare will lead to fewer drugs being distributed, or that they vastly overstated the benefits of the COVID vaccine. Those are true. It is true. But that doesn't mean that the COVID vaccine had no value. So, unfortunately, we are caught between warring media, which is, determined to push its agenda rather than committed to telling you the truth as best it can. I'd love to talk to you. 240-363-7190. Yeah, does confronting Kamala Harris on the obvious failings of her administration, is that helpful? Do you see that as a positive? Is that going to make a difference? I mean, for me, the jury's out. I'd like to know what you think. 240-363-7190. Climate Defiance is doing a tremendous job bringing to the attention of public figures in fora where they absolutely don't want it brought to their attention, that they're letting us down, they're letting the planet down, that they're acting corruptly. That Climate Defiance is doing an incredible job. Code Pink is likewise doing an outstanding job when it comes to taking on the war machine, the warmongers. And I got this. I wanted to just talk a little bit, because I haven't talked about Ukraine a lot. And I'll say in the end, again, this is, this whole, why do this really? I mean, there's a lot of reasons, but, right now, I guess if there's sort of a strategy, it is to get you to be very, very seriously interested in Dr. Cornel West and in supporting him and in voting for him, and sending that message to both parties that as long as you're corrupt, as long as your primary concern, as long as your priority is what the wealthiest and most powerful on the planet want, without any real concern for anyone else, we're not going to vote for you. So here is what I got from Medea Benjamin, tell Congress to vote no on another $24 billion for the war in Ukraine. As I understand that, that's more than enough to fund the Medicare for all, at least for a year or so. And remember, Medicare for all really pays for itself. In other words, the savings to the American public that come from cutting the profit and the bloated administrative costs associated with big pharma and for-profit healthcare are greater. They're greater. The savings are greater than the costs would be. In other words, it would be significantly cheaper for us. You would save more than you would have to pay. You would save more in your tax burden and in your reduced salaries than you would have to pay in taxes to guarantee every single American health care from cradle to grave without cost at the point of distribution. All right, so a lot of that money, $24 billion, is going, likely going to continue to be funneled outside of our country to a war that is only leading to terrible, terrible outcomes. A disaster for Ukrainians in terms of lives lost. And when I remember one of my viewers, listeners, pointing out on or claiming on Halitics, the Facebook page, that the counteroffensive was going to make a difference. We shouldn't be so sure this was all a waste of money, that Ukraine was poised to take back the territory it had lost. You know, this was when I was arguing, we need a ceasefire now. We need to negotiate. We need to put an end to this. And if that means Ukraine gives up some territory, so be it. Better to give up the territory, especially in the east where there's a Russian-speaking majority, especially in the Donbass region and other eastern and the Crimea, accept that Russia has taken this buffer from Ukraine and talk about how we can prevent future wars. That's the solution. And the argument was, they'll get it back, they'll win it back. It has not happened. It has not transpired. The counteroffensive is not going well. It has been incredibly costly in terms of human lives lost, as well as, less importantly, but still great importance to the American public, because we're largely the ones funding this war, not Europe, which is, sort of done with it to a large degree. I know France has committed a few more francs, or I guess euros, but the tide in Europe has largely turned against this war. And we're the ones funding it, which basically means just more carnage, more lands destroyed, more buildings destroyed, more deaths. Is that what you like? Is that what you want?
Well, it's been a year and a half that we've seen that Russia's objective is not only strategic strikes on industrial infrastructures, but also to instill terror within the population by striking residential areas. There were strikes on several cities, mostly in the west, as you've mentioned, but Dnipro in the central eastern part of Ukraine has been hit. An industrial and business center has been hit. The city of Lutsk bears the most damage, human casualties, with 3 people dead, 9 people injured in those strikes, also against an industrial complex. And you've mentioned the city of Lviv, which is not far from the Polish border. The city of Lviv has been hit once again, and there it's residential buildings which have been impacted. Over 100 apartments are no longer inhabitable now. They've been pulverized by the missile. There's no longer any windows. There's shards everywhere, and the missile fell right on a kindergarten, which photos circulated earlier today. This is not the first time, and it just shows you that that every day is a day where people here in Ukraine could lose their lives in such a strike, be it by missiles, be it by drones. Those are a daily danger, and unfortunately almost a daily occurrence here in Ukraine.
All right, a daily occurrence. Ukrainians losing their lives. That was from yesterday on France 24. You still think it's worth it? You still think we need to just keep this going? I sure as hell don't. And I haven't for a long time. And again, that's the Democratic establishment, the Democratic Party in lockstep support for this disaster, this humanitarian, and, by the way, climactic disaster. There's been a dispute on Halitics about a video that President Obama did where he went after the Republicans for everything that's basically gone wrong. And different people see it differently. Some of the, I guess, more pro-democratic Halitics members, viewers, agree with Obama. And many have applauded him on social media for going after the Republicans. This was several years ago, but it's recirculating. When I watch that video, I see condescension. I see extremely poor politics where you're blaming those who don't support you for being stupid or being bigoted or being ignorant. And I was thinking, Barack Obama is, I think, fairly considered he's certainly very, very intelligent, but also considered a very good politician. And I think it's fair. But I want to play a video of someone who I think was a better politician, not a better man, not at all. I mean, not that I'm saying Obama's not anybody special as a human being, but certainly not a better man. But somebody who I think understood politics in a way that we don't see in today's Democratic Party. And it's unfortunate that this man, who had tremendous gifts as a politician, squandered them both personally and in terms of governing.
That's why I'm trying to do something about it by stimulating the export, investing more, better education systems. Thank you. Glad to clarify.
Tell me how it's affected you again. You know people who've lost their jobs and lost their homes? Well, I've been governor of a small state for 12 years. I'll tell you how it's affected me. Every year, Congress and the President sign laws that make us do more things, it gives us less money to do it with. I see people in my state, middle-class people, their taxes have gone up in Washington and their services have gone down, while the wealthy have gotten tax cuts. I have seen what's happened in this last 4 years. When in my state, when people lose their jobs, there's a good chance I'll know them by their names. When a factory closes, I know the people who ran it. When the businesses go bankrupt, I know them. And I've been out here for 13 months, meeting in meetings just like this ever since October, with people like you all over America. People that have lost their jobs, lost their livelihood, lost their health insurance. What I want you to understand is the national debt is not the only cause of that. It is because America has not invested in its people. It is because we have not grown. It is because we've had 12 years of trickle-down economics. We've gone from 1st to 12th in the world in wages. We've had 4 years where we produced no private sector jobs. Most people are working harder for less money than they were making 10 years ago. It is because we are in the grip of a failed economic theory. And this decision you're about to make better be about what kind of economic theory you want. Not just people saying, I'm going to go fix it, but what are we going to do? What I think we have to do is invest in American jobs, American education, control American health care costs, and bring the American people together again.
All right. So, I mean, a beautiful speech, right? I mean, a beautiful response. And that was not, and I thought it was where he was going to also say, I feel your pain. I think he did that at another point. But Clinton really was able to empathize with the American people who have been harmed, damaged. And he says we need a new economic theory. So he's saying we move away from neoliberalism, right? Move away from deregulation. Move away from trickle-down economics. And tragically, he did not. Tragically, he did not. He did not move towards making healthcare more affordable. I think he signed off on Frist's bill to privatize and make healthcare for profit. Hospitals previously, before he took over, before he became president, had to be nonprofit. Health insurance companies had to be nonprofit. And then Bill Frist changed that. Guy from Hospital Corporation of America, senator from Tennessee. making our healthcare costs start to skyrocket. Clinton was a massive free trade guy, even though he had campaigned against NAFTA. So he spoke, he campaigned as a populist. He campaigned on the side of the working people. He didn't govern that way. But that's, there's two things. You want to win, you want to get elected, but you also want to act in a way that leaves people better off, leaves people pleased that you're president, want to support you going forward. And that is where Clinton failed utterly, although he did win re-election. Probably helped again by a Ross Perot second run, where he had no chance. And he left the country in a place where, even notwithstanding the tech boom, many Americans were ready to turn to George W. Bush, the worst president in modern, well, at least since Richard Nixon. So, I think we need to, when we're looking at politicians, when we're looking at people to support, when we're looking at Democrats, policy is of great importance, but also is campaign style, also is rhetoric. I think that really did actually help Biden. I don't like Biden, but Biden did present to a significant degree, I believe, as Joe from Scranton, working class, didn't come across as some sort of Ivy League, or didn't go to an Ivy League, went to University of Delaware. Now that you might say, well, that's, that explains, he wasn't, the academic superstar. He didn't have the intellectual firepower, candle power of a Barack Obama. Yes, all true, but most people don't. And if you're going to elect someone really bright, have it be somebody who presents as a true person of the people. And I just don't see that's what Barack Obama did. I just don't. And I think it's clear. I want to play this video here because to me, if you want Democrats to win, if you want to defeat Trump, I don't think this is going to get you there.
All Republicans think the way this guy does. The problem is that they've been riding this tiger for a long time. They've been feeding their base all kinds of crazy for years, primarily for political expedience. So if Trump was running around saying I wasn't born here, they were okay with that as long as it helped them with votes. If some of these folks on talk radio started talking about how I was the Antichrist, well, it's just politics. You think I'm joking? Donald Trump, as he's prone to do, he didn't build the building himself, but he just slapped his name on it and took credit for it. And that's what's happened in their party. All that bile, all the exaggeration, all the stuff that was not grounded in fact, just kind of bubbled up, started surfacing.
All right, so I'm going to stop it there. I don't think it's necessarily all untrue what Obama said, but people aren't going to respond to that well. He's saying that they're suckers, they're chumps, they're falling for the Republican, what is it, shuck and jive? Is that the expression? Something like that, the Republican BS. Rather than recognizing how great Obama was. Well, look, people voted for you twice. You won by big margins. Despite all the negativity towards you, President Obama, despite the racism, you won twice by big margins. You beat a war hero in 2008. You beat a very well-funded, relatively popular governor from a blue state, a red governor from a blue state, by an even bigger margin. Don't you think it, and I say this to Democrats, don't you think it would be more appealing to poor, struggling, and working class voters to say, hey, you know what? I didn't do enough for you. Your situation isn't as good as it should be. I thought the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare, would make a real difference. But we see that healthcare costs continue to rise. We see that the trade deals, the free trade deals that I championed, have not led to more employment or better wages. So I'm sorry that things didn't work out better. We need to move in a different direction. Don't you think that would be a lot more appealing to more people? I sure do. And to back it up with real action. To say, hey, you know what? I'm not going to support another neoliberal for president. I'm going to support Bernie. You know what, Brother West? He was there with me from the beginning. You know what? I'm going to ask you to, let's go somewhere in a different direction. Now, you expect him to do that? No. I don't expect President Obama to do that. But I do expect him to at least show some recognition that the resentment of him, that the anger at him and the Democrats isn't all just a figment of Republican imagination. That there were significant failings, major mistakes made that led to worse outcomes for tens of millions of Americans. And you know what? I think showing just some humility, some empathy for those less fortunate would go so far when it comes to winning votes.
I don't hate Brother Trump. I just hate mendacity. I hate gangster behavior. I don't hate Brother Biden. I just hate hypocrisy. I hate neoliberal policies that don't speak to the needs of poor and working people. And the legacy of Martin King is always what? Beginning with the least of these. I mean, I speak also as a revolutionary Christian. It's the least of these, those in prison, the hood, in the barrio, on the reservation, white brothers and sisters who are catching a lot of hell. That's why I'm going straight into Trump country. And I'm going to tell those white brothers and sisters, I care about you. I know you're wounded. You don't need to follow a neo-fascist Pied Piper like Brother Trump's. There's another way.
Why not do it as a Democrat?
Well, because the Democratic Party has shown itself over and over again, and you know my love for my dear brother Bernie Sanders. It's shown itself that both parties now stand in the way of coming to terms with the plight of poor and working people. 60% of our fellow citizens, no matter what color, barely making it.
All right, so there it is. 60-second pitch there from the Chris Cuomo show. That's my guy. I hope he's yours too. Hope you consider for sure Dr. Cornel West for president. Tomorrow, Miss Lizzie, don't forget, click like, click subscribe.